The island is smaller than most city blocks. Yet it was engineered to hold an entire industrial city. Concrete replaces soil. Seawalls replace coastline. Buildings rise not because people need space, but because horizontal expansion is impossible. Every meter is calculated. Every surface is load-bearing. Every window faces another window, another corridor, another wall. What does it mean to live where density is not a byproduct but a requirement? Here the ground itself was insufficient. Land had to be manufactured. The sea had to be restrained. Beneath the surface, coal seams ran under the ocean floor, and human labor was stacked above them, layer upon layer, floor upon floor, until vertical living became the only option. This was not a town that grew. It was a system that assembled. Families lived inside reinforced concrete blocks designed to resist typhoons, not to offer comfort. Schools, clinics, shops, and recreation were compressed into tight corridors because distance wasted energy. Water arrived through undersea pipes. Food arrived on schedules dictated by weather and output. Time was organized around shifts descending into heat, pressure, and darkness below sea level. At its peak, over 5,000 people occupied this engineered perimeter. Not spread across land, compressed into it. What happens to daily life when efficiency becomes the dominant value? When architecture answers production before it answers people? When even silence is measured by how it affects output? From above, the island's outline resembles a battleship. From within, it functions like machinery. Concrete corridors channel movement. Window grids regulate light. Elevation replaces streets. The sea is no longer an edge, it is a wall. There is no countryside, no horizon, no distance from the system that sustains you. This place did not exist to be lived in, it existed to extract. And everything else, housing, education, family life, was built to serve that single purpose. Hashima was never misunderstood. It was never misused. It was never accidental. From the moment Mitsubishi purchased the island in 1890, its future was already constrained by mathematics rather than ambition. The island measured less than 500 meters in length. Its width narrowed to barely 160. There was no hinterland, no surplus land, no margin for inefficiency. What existed was a reef exposed to open sea, sitting above coal seams that ran beneath the ocean floor. Mitsubishi did not buy a town site. It bought a boundary. The company's interest was not shaped by what could be built comfortably, but by what could be forced to function under pressure. The coal beneath Hashima was valuable not because it was easy to reach, but because it was strategically located, close to our Nagasaki's industrial infrastructure, close to shipping routes, close enough to justify extreme concentration of labor and capital. The island itself offered resistance at every stage. There was no natural harbor. Typhoons struck directly. Waves did not dissipate across beaches. They hit vertical rock. Every ton of material brought in had to arrive by sea. Every mistake had nowhere to disperse. What kind of industrial system chooses a place like this? The answer is not optimism. It is control. On Hashima, ownership could be total because escape was impractical. Workers could not live nearby and commute. Families could not settle beyond company housing. Services could not exist independently of the operator. To extract coal here required the creation of a complete, enclosed apparatus, labor, housing, utilities, education, healthcare, all compressed into a footprint that could not expand laterally. This was not a byproduct of industrialization. It was the condition of it. Unlike inland mining towns that grew outward, Hashima grew inward. Every decision intensified density rather than relieving it. Housing allocation was not a social matter. It was an operational one. Where you lived determined how quickly you could be mobilized, treated, replaced. What does choice look like when geography removes alternatives? From the beginning, the island's design eliminated redundancy in human terms. There would be no informal settlements, no parallel economies, no unregulated spaces. Mitsubishi's authority did not need to be asserted loudly because it was, embedded spatially. The island itself enforced compliance. Land was scarce. Time was valuable. Labor had to be close, available, and predictable. The company responded not with flexibility but with precision. Mine shafts were planned alongside housing. Supply schedules were calculated against sea conditions. Storm defenses were designed not to preserve comfort but to protect continuity. If the mine stopped, everything stopped. The island could not survive partial failure. This created a specific logic. Every structure had to justify its existence through function. Anything that did not serve extraction or stabilization was excess, and excess could not be afforded here. Hashima did not become a company town over time. It was conceived as one, and because the space was finite, control intensified naturally. There was no need for fences. The sea performed that role. There was no need for distant oversight. Everything was visible, measured, contained. The island did not ask people to adapt to industrial life. It required them to fit inside it. By purchasing Hashima, Mitsubishi accepted a trade, absolute control in exchange for absolute constraint. There would be no graceful failure here, no gradual transition. A system built within fixed limits can only operate at full capacity or cease entirely. That condition was not discovered later. It was present at the moment of purchase. Hashima was not built to endure change. It was built to endure pressure. And pressure, once locked into concrete and geography, does not negotiate. Hashima's first limitation was space. Its second was permanence. The original island was a narrow reef, irregular, uneven, and insufficient to support the scale of extraction Mitsubishi intended. Coal could be reached, but only if the surface above it could hold people, machinery, and protection from the sea. The problem was not how to mine. It was where to stand while doing it. So the island was altered. Over decades, Mitsubishi carried out 6 major land reclamation projects. These were not expansions in the conventional sense. No new freedom was created. Each addition was calculated to stabilize an increasingly heavy system. Rock and concrete were layered onto the reef to increase load-bearing capacity, to anchor buildings, and to resist erosion from constant wave impact. The sea did not recede. It was pushed back. Reclamation changed the island's outline, but not its logic. The usable area tripled, yet the sensation of space diminished. Every added meter was immediately consumed by necessity. More housing for laborers, more structural mass to support vertical construction, more surface to distribute pressure from storms. What does land mean when it must justify itself through productivity? The new ground was not neutral. It was engineered to perform. Drainage channels were aligned to prevent flooding. Foundations were reinforced to carry multi-story concrete blocks. Shorelines were armored, turning the island into a hard-edged object that reflected wave energy rather than absorbing it. This created a new relationship with the environment. Typhoons did not gradually erode beaches. They struck walls. Salt did not fade gently into soil. It accumulated on concrete and steel. Every storm tested the perimeter, and every successful defense reinforced the decision to build harder, heavier, and more enclosed. Reclamation did not make Hashima safer. It made it more dependent. The more material added, the more maintenance was required. The island could no longer tolerate neglect. Seawalls had to hold. Drainage had to function. Any failure risked cascading damage across the entire surface because there was nowhere for water, debris, or people to escape. How stable can a place be when its survival depends on constant intervention? Land here was not something you owned once. It had to be continuously defended. The island's survival became an ongoing engineering task, binding daily life to infrastructure performance. A crack in a seawall was not a local issue. It threatened the system as a whole. This altered how the island was perceived by those who lived on it. The sea was no longer a boundary or a resource. It was pressure. It was an active force that demanded attention, budgets, labor, and planning. The island existed in negotiation with water that never relented. By manufacturing land, Mitsubishi committed to a future without retreat. There was no natural state to return to. The island could not be abandoned gradually or reduced gently. Once built, it had to function at scale or not at all. Reclamation solved the problem of space by eliminating flexibility. Hashima became heavier, denser, and more rigid with each addition. The island's mass increased, but its tolerance for change decreased. What looked like growth was actually commitment, each new layer making reversal more difficult. This was not expansion driven by optimism. It was reinforcement driven by necessity. The island did not grow outward to accommodate life. Life was compressed inward to justify the island. And with every ton of concrete poured into the sea, Hashima moved further away from being a place and closer to becoming a fixed industrial object, bound to a single function, exposed to a single failure mode, and unable to adjust once conditions changed. Once the island's surface was exhausted, height became the only remaining variable. By the early 20th century, horizontal expansion had reached its practical limit. Reclaimed land could stabilize the perimeter, but it could not create the spacing required for low-density housing. The workforce continued to grow. The mine required proximity, availability, and rapid turnover. The solution was not suburban planning. It was vertical compression. In 1916, reinforced concrete apartment buildings rose on Hashima, among the earliest of their kind in Japan. These structures were not statements of modern living. They were load-bearing responses to climate, density, and operational necessity. Concrete resisted typhoon winds better than wood. It tolerated salt exposure longer. It allowed height without sacrificing footprint. What happens when architecture is designed to endure weather before it considers people? The buildings rose in tight formations, their spacing dictated by structural safety and light access rather than comfort. Windows faced other windows across narrow gaps. Corridors ran straight and narrow to reduce wasted volume. Stairwells were engineered for throughput, not gathering. There were no streets in the traditional sense. Circulation replaced community. Elevation became routine. Children learned stair counts before they learned distance. Daily movement was vertical, repetitive, and enclosed. The island did not offer perspective. It offered layers. Apartments were compact and standardized. Variation complicated maintenance. Uniformity simplified control. Repairs could be replicated. Inspections could be systematic. The buildings functioned as stacked units of habitation, each calibrated to hold a family close enough to the mine to remain available. What does domestic life become when it is optimized for proximity? Noise traveled easily. Privacy was negotiated rather than granted. Windows admitted light but not escape. From most interiors, the sea was not visible. What could be seen was concrete, railings, stair landings, evidence of density repeated at every level. Vertical housing also altered how the island absorbed stress. During storms, the reinforced blocks functioned as windbreaks. Their mass dampened vibration. Their height allowed more people to be housed within a smaller defensive perimeter. Safety improved, but dependence increased. When one building required repair, others absorbed the displaced residents. There was no spare capacity. The island did not separate living from working. It layered them. Beneath the apartments, infrastructure ran continuously. Water lines, power, access routes to shafts. Below that, the mine descended into the seabed. Daily life existed above a void shaped by extraction, supported by structures designed to outlast it. Vertical living was not a social evolution. It was a technical solution to a spatial problem. By committing to height, Hashima accepted a new constraint. Once built, these structures could not be reconfigured easily. Their purpose was fixed. Their scale was final. They were designed for a specific population, working a specific industry, under specific conditions. When those conditions changed, the buildings would not adapt. On Hashima, architecture did not respond to life. Life adjusted to architecture, and with every additional floor poured in concrete, the island moved further away from flexibility and deeper into a form that could only function as long as the system beneath it remained intact. The mine dictated the rhythm. Everything else followed. On Hashima, labor was not structured around individual endurance or skill. It was structured around continuity. Coal extraction required uninterrupted flow, and the island's systems were designed to reduce anything that threatened distance, delay, unpredictability. Workers descended into the mine in rotating shifts. Shafts dropped deep below sea level, into galleries where temperature and humidity increased with depth. Movement underground was linear and scheduled. Rails, lifts, and passageways were arranged to keep bodies and material moving, without collision or pause. What happens to human effort when it is measured as throughput? Above ground, life synchronized itself to these cycles. Sleep schedules aligned with shift changes. Meals were timed to return windows. Medical services prioritized rapid treatment over long-term care. The goal was not restoration. It was readiness. The island did not ask how workers felt. It monitored whether they could continue. This approach reduced variability. Fatigue could be anticipated. Absences could be covered. The workforce was sized not for resilience but for replacement. Enough labor existed to absorb loss without halting extraction. In such a system, safety was procedural rather than personal. Logs recorded incidents. Adjustments were made to workflows. But risk itself was not eliminated, it was distributed. The mine accepted a baseline level of danger as a cost of operation. How much risk can be normalized before it becomes invisible? The island's compactness reinforced this normalization. Everyone knew the mine. Everyone depended on it. Accidents did not disrupt belief in the system. They were absorbed into it. The proximity between home and shaft collapsed the distance between work and consequence. Labor organization extended beyond the mine itself. Nothing was designed to slow the cycle. Hashima did not extract coal by exhausting individuals. It extracted coal by maintaining flow. The mine's needs shaped social structure. Shift workers moved through the island like components in a larger mechanism. Their presence was constant, but their roles were interchangeable. What mattered was not who descended, only that someone did. This approach produced stability without security. As long as coal moved upward, the system justified itself. When it did not, nothing else on the island had independent value. Labor here was not diversified. It was concentrated. On Hashima, work was not a part of life. It was the organizing principle of it. And once labor became flow, the island's fate became inseparable from the uninterrupted operation of a system that could not pause, reflect, or reconfigure without collapsing its own logic. By the late 1950s, Hashima carried a human load that matched its engineered density. At its peak, official counts placed the population just over 5,000, families stacked, floor upon floor within, concrete blocks built to resist, wind and salt rather than to offer space. Everything, schools, clinics, shops, existed because the mine demanded it. Nothing existed independently of the apparatus. During the wartime years, the island's operational pressure increased. Historical records and subsequent commissions document that laborers from across Japan's occupied territories were brought to essential industrial sites, including Hashima. At times, several hundred non-Japanese laborers were present under strict mobilization controls. These presences did not change the island's forms. They were incorporated into a system designed to maximize continuity at cost. The result was an intense, interdependent population, compressed, scheduled, and visible, whose scale and composition would later matter for how the island was remembered and represented. Hashima did not collapse from damage, it stalled from irrelevance. By the 1950s, the conditions that justified the island's existence began to shift outside its control. Japan's national energy strategy moved away from coal toward oil. The decision was economic, logistical, and political, and it was made far from the island's concrete perimeter. What happens to a closed system when the external logic that sustains it changes? Coal demand declined. Prices fell. Extraction costs on Hashima rose as seams deepened and productivity diminished. The very engineering that once made the island efficient now amplified its disadvantage. Deeper shafts meant higher temperatures, greater humidity, longer travel times underground, and increased strain on equipment. The island could not scale down. It could only operate or stop. Unlike dispersed mining regions, Hashima had no partial mode. Housing density, service capacity, and labor organization were calibrated to a full workforce. A reduced population would destabilize supply chains, overwhelm maintenance ratios, and render services inefficient. What does adaptation mean when nothing can be repurposed? Oil did not require vertical housing. It did not require undersea shafts. It did not require a sealed island. Hashima's infrastructure was too specific to transition. Concrete apartment blocks could not be converted to other industries. Seawalls protected nothing without extraction. Schools, clinics, and shops existed only because the mine justified their presence. The island had been built as a single-purpose organism. As coal demand fell, that purpose narrowed. Maintenance became harder to justify. Investment slowed. What had once been reinforced relentlessly was now merely sustained. The system entered a holding pattern, not growing, not renewing, only functioning. How long can a system continue when its output no longer matters? By the early 1970s, the answer was clear. Coal extraction on Hashima no longer aligned with national priorities or market logic. The island had not failed operationally. It had failed strategically. In January 1974, Mitsubishi terminated mining operations. There was no gradual workforce reduction. There was no phased transition. Because the island could not function partially, closure had to be total. Residents were evacuated by April. What does evacuation mean when departure is permanent? Families left quickly because staying served no purpose. Employment ended. Services ceased. Supply chain stopped. The same efficiency that once sustained daily life now accelerated its removal. The system disengaged. Hashima had been built for continuity under pressure. It was not built for redundancy, evolution, or afterlife. When the input disappeared, the output followed. And for the first time since its purchase, the island was no longer dense, not because space had increased, but because function had vanished. The machine did not break. It was switched off. When the people left, Hashima did not crumble. It endured in form but not in function. Buildings remained where they had always stood. Apartment blocks, corridors, stairwells, and schoolrooms, all untouched by human intention. Furniture, tools, and personal items stayed where they were last used, frozen as if the system had simply paused rather than ended. The island did not empty gradually. It was vacated in weeks, leaving behind a dense framework of concrete that no longer served the processes it had been built to sustain. The seawalls, designed to resist storms, continued to stand against wind and wave. They preserved the perimeter, even as salt and rain began their slow work on steel and concrete. Each structure that survived did so because it had been engineered for durability, not because it needed to function without people. What remains when a system designed to organize life loses the life it was built around? Hashima's streets, if they can be called that, ran empty. Corridors that once funneled families toward work or school now echoed only with the wind. Shafts descended into darkness without rotation. Rails carried no carts and pumps ran dry. The island became an artifact, its density preserved but its operations halted. Ownership transferred multiple times. Mitsubishi donated the island to Takashima Town in 2001, and later municipal reorganization placed it under Nagasaki City's administration. For decades, access was restricted. The structures, though intact, could no longer be used safely or purposefully. The island had survived, but its reason for survival had vanished. Tourism returned in 2009, with guided access to a selection of areas, and UNESCO recognized Hashima as part of the Meiji Industrial Revolution sites in 2015. Visitors saw a place frozen in time, but not alive in function. Preservation efforts now stabilize what was once dynamic, converting operational logic into visual memory. What does endurance mean when the machinery no longer moves? Hashima remains a machine without operation, a system preserved in concrete and steel, a record of what was demanded of both people and structure. Its survival is not evidence of continued purpose, it is evidence of design. Every building, every wall, every corridor testifies to human compression, to efficiency taken to its ultimate limit, and to the absence that follows when necessity vanishes. The island does not tell stories. It records outcomes. It exists as proof that even the most complete system can outlast its reason to exist. If you want to see more deep-dive documentaries exploring industrial systems, human compression, and the landscapes left behind by abandoned ambition, subscribe to the channel. Hashima stands as a silent testament, but there are many more systems to examine. Hashima no longer produces anything. It only persists. And that is enough.